and I'm with Mike Kayamori from CoinX. Thanks for joining me today, Mike.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. So how is the Money 2020 event treating you this year?
Well, it's my first time
Okay.
attending any Money 2020 event in the world. Just the sheer amount of people and the scale, it's second to none.
Right? Okay. I feel as a traditional fintech event, it feels like it's very heavily infiltrated by blockchain and cryptocurrency this year. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think compared to past years when crypto or blockchain was maybe a little bit of a side project, it's coming mainstream now.
Absolutely. What is it about crypto and blockchain that's allowing it to go mainstream?
Well, I think people are starting to realize that this is the future, right? When you look at everything going digital, finance and banking was the last thing. They were always laggards. And now with fintech, from investors, from token issuers to even the participants, they're all interested in the digital future. And obviously, the future of finance and digital is, to me, it's crypto and blockchain.
Absolutely. So obviously we've had tremendous advancements. What's holding it back right now?
Well, there's many things, and
Okay.
it changes. It's changed over the years, right? So I think like 4 years ago when I started this company, there was just general denial from everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, right? So people thought I was a money launderer or helping the dark web and all those. Those days are gone, right? And now progressive countries are proactively putting regulations, guidelines, and framework, while other countries are banning it or they're still struggling how to embrace it. Banks in general are still in denial and rejection mode, unfortunately. So when you look at it from a high level, it's still very early where more on the retail and the users are accepting it, embracing it, looking at this as a new and more familiar crypto that or a store of value that they can resonate, while traditional financial institutions are still taking time to grasp.
Right. They're really slow. Legacy finance is very slow.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I feel like they've been very comfortable in their position for the past hundreds of years, and it's a bit of a shock to their system.
It is. But it's going to happen regardless, with or without. So the progressive banks will embrace, and progressive countries will embrace and regulate as well. So it's the passive denial or rejection. It's now how you get involved. How do you embrace? I think it's that stage now.
Right. I find it really amusing that if a headline has the word cryptocurrency regulation in it, you can see a massive drop in the markets. But if you really think about it, the regulation is really positive. CoinX has set themselves up really nicely with their FSC license. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so we're the first global exchange to be regulated in Japan. So every other exchange is actually local exchanges in Japan being licensed, but we're the first global exchange
Okay,
to
right.
be regulated.
I see. Right.
So there were 16 licenses given out on the first batch. We were the only global one. So we started out in Singapore, and we already had a global operation, right? So from that perspective, we knew, and it was a 2-year process, right? So it is daunting to think that we have to do this for every country that we want to go in, and that's why we look at partners. So we want to work with financial institutions, progressive banks, partners in the payment space or remittance space who are keen and interested in coming in because we actually want to partner with them.
So speaking of partners, can you name any names?
Yeah, so for example, this island, Gibraltar. Are you familiar with Gibraltar?
Yes,
It's a independent government in the British, not territory, but in the UK. They've launched the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange. They also passed the legislation on DLT, which is distributed ledger technology.
Okay, cool.
And their exchange is going to be powered by us.
Right.
Exactly. So we're going to provide the entire exchange trading platform for them, and that's a very typical way for us to partner and expand globally.
Cool. Are there any yet to be announced partnerships that you would like to announce on my show.
Actually, not yet, not yet,
Not yet.
not yet. But there's a lot. That's actually going to be our preferred way to globally expand.
Right. Well, I'm an early adopter of cash because of the regulation side. I was always really quite impressed with your approach to jump through all the hoops properly and set yourselves up quite
Yeah.
nicely for the future. So
Yeah, there's already too many regulation, right? People say there's a lack of regulation. That's not the case. When you look at securities, it's already fully regulated. There's regulation in everything from money transfer to payments and all those. The challenge is there wasn't one that really fit with crypto.
right.
So they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And that's the challenge that we have. And it differs by each country, right? So now I think the G20 is trying to come with a consensus. There's going to be a territorial or regional agreed consensus on how to handle crypto and blockchain.
Well, if you look at what happened in Japan just last week, the crackdown on exchanges, the main motivation was to protect consumers,
Yeah.
which I think is quite righteous. It's a good approach of the Japanese.
It is, but the challenge is in the digital. So it is a good thing. The challenge is in the digital era. A customer or a user in Japan can always join an offshore exchange. And these people are not regulated, right? So the Japanese government or the FSA can regulate local exchanges or registered exchanges like us, but they won't be able to regulate the offshore exchanges. And that's going to be a big challenge. So that's why there needs to be a conscious effort among governments to jointly have like a guideline or consensus around how to protect consumers, because they can easily join and start trading on offshore exchanges.
Well, that hasn't really changed. I mean, offshore banking has been a concept for a long time. It's just faster and much easier to do it now.
It is.
Yeah, cool. I'd like to ask you, what was the main motivation behind starting Cash to begin with and starting the World Book system that you're about to launch?
Yeah, so well, first let's start where in 2010 was the first time I was familiar of Bitcoin, and that's when I knew this was the future. They were like, this is the digital cash or internet of money.
How'd you find out about it?
I was in Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the first wave came in that year, right? So
Yeah.
a year after the white paper of Satoshi came out. But there was no place to buy. I had to go to a bar and
Yeah.
get it from someone else. And it wasn't the most legitimate or the a good way to buy.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then in 2013, the second wave came. There was still no credible exchange that I wanted to buy it. So I started my own. Right. So there was no exchange.
That's the motivation. You were just fed up with the fact you couldn't buy legitimately.
Legitimately.
So you went ahead, you stepped up and created that platform.
Yeah. So it wasn't
That's cool.
it wasn't
like
like E-Trade or anyone offered cryptocurrency. It was all these new ones that when you look at social media or Reddit, they had a lot of issues. So we knew there needed to be an exchange that was built by bankers. Right. So that's how we started. And then again, fast forward another 2 years in 2017, where now there's a lot of exchanges that are out there. But then there's
It's actually over 9,200.
Oh my goodness. All right. But now there's a liquidity issue. There's so many tokens. If it was only Bitcoin, it's okay. But now there's over 2,000 crypto tokens out there, and there's liquidity issues. And that's where, because of the relationship that we have with other exchanges, there was a need for a world book where it's an aggregated global order book connecting with other exchanges to offer liquidity to users, right? So that's how we knew that there was a big pain point, and we knew we could solve it. We're building a fintech friendly blockchain, right? So where you need performance, you need low latency, but it needs to be pro-regulation. So all of these things are going to be embedded in our blockchain, and the native token for that is Cash.
Right. Fantastic. So think back to your time in Silicon Valley. What was it about Bitcoin that sort of sparked your interest specifically? Can you remember?
No, of course. So I was a VC in Silicon Valley from 2003 to 2011, right? One of the things we would be hesitant to invest in was the government sector, the education sector, and the banking sector because they were all highly regulated. It was difficult to go in. The metabolism of the industry itself was slow, right? But that's when, and also with the global financial crisis that happened in 2008, it wasn't the right timing for any like fintech companies or anything like that. I mean, PayPal came out in 1999, 2000, but there wasn't like a real innovation after that. And but that's when Bitcoin came, right? And this was when the first wave of um, crypto came, where the, it was possible now to send value, send Bitcoin across the globe, real time, for almost zero fees, right? And that also, it was a perfect storm where the smartphone started to come out, right? So that was 2008 when the first iPhone came out and the whole app ecosystem came. So these two kind of merged together, and
Nice.
that
Yeah,
was when it really
synchronicity, that's right.
rang that this is going to be the future. Everything's going to be digital. It's going to be cashless. A lot of service providers are going to be assetless, and it's going to be borderless, right? So when you combine all these things together with mobile and smartphone, this was the future.
I find that legacy finance pundits often struggle with understanding the the value behind cryptocurrencies. And one thing I really think they overlook is the fact that for the first time, it's a viable option outside of the fiat system. Uh, do you agree or disagree with the concept that, that extra option gives value to the technology?
I completely agree.
Great.
Right? I think the existing banking has its limitations. I mean, it's worked in a regulated environment. You go to every country in the world, the best business district and the most prestigious building are always banks, right? But have they been able to solve the underbanked or the unbanked ecosystem? They haven't, because it's limited, right?
I think their mentality was not to solve a problem, but just milk it, just get it.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, we don't need to offer global financial services. They come to us, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at emerging markets where there's still 60%, 70% of the population underbanked or unbanked, but now with the smartphone and digital currencies, that completely changes, where now the power is with the people, right? And that's where I think this whole crypto blockchain disruption is going to be profound and deep.
Right. So looking at the 2008 financial crisis, and also looking at the fact that the Japanese debt to GDP is 200%, I think the last time I read, the Japanese government spends over 50% of their taxes now just to cover interest payments. How is this industry going to help this seemingly hopeless situation, and can it help? What do you think?
Well, I think you also need to look at how much asset does the Japanese government or the country have, right? So if you have a home and you get a home equity loan, right? You just don't look at the loan or the debt that you have, and the capability of paying back it, because there's an underlying asset, right? So I think some of the people forget is Japan is an asset-rich country, and the government owns a lot of assets. So yes, their debt might be 2x their GDP, but they has huge amount of assets that when you look at it from a balance sheet perspective, it's okay. But that said, I think in general, what you can say is the existing fiat banking system is it's been around for centuries, and it hasn't evolved. That's a problem.
Right.
It has not evolved, and there's a resistance to innovation because it's lukewarm. It's regulated. You're protected, right? Even when when there was a financial crisis in Japan, they were all bailed out, right? So even in the U.S., they got. I mean, a few banks went under, but most of them were.
It was helicopter money, wasn't it?
Exactly, right.
Yeah, right.
So compared to that, it's cryptocurrency is liberating.
Right.
Right. Now the problem is the government's in all are trying to come and regulate it. There's already enough regulation from my perspective,
Okay.
but it's going to happen. So there's going to be a struggle within the crypto ecosystem who embraces regulation and people who are anti-regulation, more ideology-driven.
Cool. I'm going to switch modes a little bit here and get into the cultural side of this movement. So I really find it fascinating that despite predictions and naysayers, these decentralized communities are actually working really well together.
Yeah.
And this is in a time where in society you see a lot of fractured groups that can't agree on anything. And this whole movement is the exact antithesis of this huge problem we see in society. What is it about the industry that helps us really unite and work so well together?
Well, that's a good point, and that's something I'm not maybe the right person to talk or give my opinion, but people
you're very much a good person to ask this question to.
So I think people unite for a common goal or a common ideology, and the beauty of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and blockchain is it empowers the users, right? I want to say it takes power away from centralization or governments or authorities, but it does give more power. It democratizes many elements, especially money, right? So in the world, when you look at the haves and the have-nots, where there's big income disparity, so there was a token buyer of our cash token who contacted me from Sri Lanka, saying this was the first time he's going to participate in an ICO, right? So he saved his earnings to participate, right? So this was his first time participating in a financial service. And the good thing is, because our cash token has gone up since, he's now interested in looking at other ways to invest in. So this brings a person who was a cash-based economy to enjoy and embrace financial services, right? So this is a good example of crypto and blockchain where the power is now with the users. He might not even have a bank account, but he has a smartphone and he was able to exchange it at a local exchange. So now he can participate in these ICOs.
Cool. I want to ask you, the evidence that we can work together in a decentralized nature, is that possible proof that we can one day, at least at the city level, govern ourselves in a decentralized nature? At least at the city level. We'll start small. Is it a possibility? What do you think?
No. Actually, it doesn't have to be at a city level. I think it should be just from a common interest perspective, and it could be borderless, right? So I believe in communities where communities help each other for a common goal, and that could pan geographies or territories. And as the important thing is, can these communities provide safety net when something happens? Can they provide that safety where in the past that was the job of the government? That was the job of the government that protects the users, that extends healthcare and insurance and basic income and all these things. If I think there's going to be communities who will be supporting those. I mean, supporting an ecosystem where they care about that society, right? I think it's going to start from maybe companies or corporates,
right?
Like Google and all others are building an entire community, like including housing for their employees with all the healthcare and all the benefits. So that's starting in the large corporates. But I think in the crypto world with common interests, I think these things will happen as well.
Okay, we're running out of time
All
here
right.
for you, so just one more question. This technology can clearly be used to create an economic control grid in a dystopian society. What can and what should we do now to prevent that from happening?
What is your concern again? Can you?
Well, the fact that you can track and trace every single transaction that's made.
Yes.
My concern is
Privacy, or what is your concern there?
Just
Control.
just the potential that the government has complete control over and
mm.
knowledge of absolutely everything we do through this technology. So what can we do and what should we do to...
And is your concern around the government
Yep.
or corporates as well? Like, for example, like
Both. They can be both
Yeah.
just as bad.
Yeah, like for
Yeah.
example, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon combined together probably know more about you than yourself
Yep.
or your spouse, right?
Yeah.
Behavioral patterns, purchasing behavior, like patterns,
Mhm.
special interests that you want to hide, all these things they know, right? It is true that through blockchain that everything is recorded in a ledger, that people who have access to that will be able to trace everything
Mhm.
that you've done. So from that perspective, yes, there is a challenge for people who feel uncomfortable with that.
Mhm.
And but it happens in every industry, everywhere. I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Right.
If I were in China living as a Chinese, I won't be happy when government knows everything about me,
Right.
right? So, but there is a balance where they also provide that probably a safety net and things that a pure liberal environment cannot, right?
Right.
So again, I'm not
There's
sure
trade-offs, is
yeah,
what you're saying.
there are
if it gets to
trade-offs.
that extent, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the world is going to go there, where everything is going to be digital and everything's going to be trackable. Everything's going to be in a database, and so it is going to happen. That's why I think even in the crypto world, there's a big push towards privacy, dark tokens, and pure decentralization, right? So there is going to be a struggle between those two camps.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that, and maybe we can pick up the conversation at another time.
Exactly.
That's
All right.
great. Thanks for
Thank
being
you so
on the
much,
show.
Decentro. All right.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.